know one of the clips that you kind of pulled from ours was talking about Nephilim stuff.
Once you realize this seed war, then you know that the Amorites were actually Nephilim.
And I think there are demons in the spirit realm, and I think a lot of what we're talking about when it comes to UFOs, there seems to be God's desire to wipe out the Nephilim with the flood, but yet they seem...
Well, it talks about the abyss, right? And how these Nephilim beings and fallen angels are going to come and be on this earth and attack, all of us.
Ruslan.
Hey, before we get into that, guys, my name is Ruslan. This channel exists to encourage, empower, and inspire you to live a life that blesses God. If you're new here, if you're not new here, please do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. I just got back from Dallas, had the amazing opportunity to hang out with my friends over at Faith and Friction Podcast. So what you're about to see next is one of the highlights from that conversation. We will have the full conversation in all its glory pinned in the comment below, as well as at the end of this video, so you can go check that out. All right, let's hop into it.
You said the best for last. Let's say Nephilim, red heifers, and just overall eschatological viewpoint.
Yeah. So I was going to ask him this, though. This is my rapid fire. Pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib rapture, and those two. Where are we at in the last days?
And I know one of the clips that you kind of pulled from ours was talking about Nephilim stuff. And Annalise, that's her jam. It's her favorite subject to talk about.
I love it.
I don't know, but I love it.
Well, the funny thing about the Nephilim is like, when I first got saved, I was into this back then, like really.
Oh, wow. Before everybody was talking about it.
Yeah, because my mom grew up really into aliens. Another one of those typical, like, I don't want to submit to God. I don't want to submit to the church. Yeah. There's something else out there. It's aliens.
Gotta be.
Gotta be. And so after I got saved, like, this is 2002. Read a book on the Nephilim back then.
Okay.
That's
and
amazing.
the connection to the aliens and that whole thing.
Yeah.
So this is super interesting. And one of my mentors has like always been into it. And so I think I've always just been fascinated by the topic. I think in terms of, are we going from Nephilim or
Take wherever.
I think, okay, so
Take it wherever you want
I
to
would
take
say
it.
I think that there is a spirit realm. And I think there are demons in the spirit realm. And I think a lot of what we're talking about when it comes to UFOs are demons. I'd say pretty much all of it.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment.
And in that, because I think it makes more sense that it's another realm,
correct,
or another dimension, unless that they have this phenomenal technology that go, like the stuff that these are able to do. I don't think this is
the laws of physics.
They don't, and to even travel far enough from a galaxy that has light. They're not coming from Mars, like they're coming from a different universe or a different galaxy, which is then impossible to go that far unless you're changing dimensions or fish. What is that called? Teleporting.
We talked about that.
Right, we did. So I think that to me sounds like another realm and less of like a material physical thing. So to me, that's always been like my view of it. Now, whether or not it's the Nephilim, or it's the weird descendants of the Nephilim, or like Nephilim went on to be these aliens, or whatever it is. I don't know, right? Because it gets confusing in terms of like, there seems to be God's desire to wipe out the Nephilim with the flood, but yet they seem to
come back.
Be here,
So I'm very perplexed. So I don't know how all of that works. But I do think it's a fair argument to be like, these disembodied spirit people are still influential. And then I get into like, I don't know if you've ever read this, you would get a kick out of this. C.S. Lewis's Screw Tape Letters.
For sure.
Oh, it's so good. And it's demons writing back and forth to each other, how to secure people for hell. It's an amazing, C.S. Lewis is writing from the perspective of two demons. And so I think of that, and I think of just like that realm and how it works, And so, I think there's I'd say sufficient amount of precedent to it, but it's not my wheelhouse, which is why I like listening to you guys and Gandhi and other people and reacting to it,
Nah, that's what's up.
Well, I do think it plays a role in like in time, like we're big in time people. We believe like God is coming soon, and how the Nephilim, well, it talks about the abyss, right? And how these Nephilim beings and fallen angels are going to come and be on this earth and attack, all of us. So attack all of us. I just want to know, like, what is your take on like end time prophecy? Where are you on that?
So I'm very open on all of that.
Okay.
So I have a position that I prefer, but I don't hold to it because I know I'm certain about it.
Yeah,
it's like I
appreciate
really
that.
want this to be true,
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
I love that.
but I don't. know
yeah,
if it's
for
true.
sure.
Especially when I hear good debates on it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that was very compelling.
Yeah.
I ain't got
So
nothing
You go
to
back
say.
and forth. Yeah.
So I'll tell you guys what I hope is true,
For sure.
and then I'll tell you guys what I think the application is, regardless on if
That's
it's
good.
true or
That's
not.
good.
So what I lean to, what I want to be true, what I'm hoping is true, is no trib. I lean and prefer a post-millennial position. So Jesus, through his church, ushers in goodness, beauty, revival into the whole world, and the world becomes more and more and more and more and more Christian. And there's a 1,000-year reign, and then Jesus comes back. Things get better before they get worse. So that position is much more, it views a lot of the passages about like the spooky stuff
For sure.
as if that stuff happened in 70 AD with the destruction of the temple. So it's called partial preterism. So the folks that hold this, that you guys may be familiar with, it's interesting. It's a weird horseshoe where it's like the hyper charismatic Seven Mountain people, the Seven Mountain Mandate people.
Yeah.
It's like
Oh,
those
yeah.
people kind of hold to this position. And then I don't agree with these folks on almost anything else, but then it's like the really intense Calvinist. Doug Wilson, James White, Jeff Durbin, Joel Webben, they hold to it. So it's a post-millennial position. And then you can get into like theonomy, and it kind of gets a little weird when you get to theonomy and starts sounding like Handmaid's Tale, and it gets really weird. Right now, I'm not saying that I agree with all that, but that's the position I want to be true in terms of let's go out, preach the gospel to the nations. Let's make the world a better place. Let's usher in beauty and goodness and virtue. And as the world becomes more and more Christian, more and more revival breaks out, then Jesus comes back to a Christianized world. That's what I want to be true.
Yeah.
Sure.
I don't look like what's happening. Right. I watched that debate.
And I was about to say,
last
did
night.
you see the debate?
I saw the debate, and I was like, "Oh man, we're cooked."
It's a wrap.
If this ain't the
It's
judgment
a
of
wrap.
God on America, I don't know. They're arguing about that. Who's the better
Golf,
golfer?
the golf.
You know, so when I saw that, I was like,
Couldn't
oh,
even hit
man,
it 50
I might be
odds.
very wrong on this whole post-millennial. So that's the position I want to be true.
Okay.
However,
Fair.
when I hear Dr. Michael Brown, who I adore in the faith, when I hear Greg Laurie, when I hear folks that hold a very different eschatology, I go, they sound very compelling too.
You know what I mean?
So
Yeah.
I think regardless on where people fall on this, I think of a couple key passages. The first passage I think of is John and Jesus in the Last Supper. And Jesus at the Last Supper is saying some very interesting things where he's washing the disciples' feet, right? And he's talking about servanthood and being the last shall be first, right? And the least of you will be the greatest. The greatest servant is the one who serves. And then he demonstrates that by washing their feet. And then he goes on to say, a new command I give you, love each other the way I have loved you, right? Which I go, okay. So foundationally, and he says, that's how the world will know each other. So foundationally, I go, okay, what is the metric of how the world will know if I'm a Christian is actually how I treat and love other Christians.
100%.
Regardless on which stream they belong to.
Exactly.
So that's like the first framework I start with. Then as I build on top of that, I go, okay, Revelation's talking about Babylon. If we go to the Old Testament about the parallels to Babylon and people being exiles in Babylon, I go to Jeremiah chapter 29. Jeremiah chapter 29, I know the plans I have.
Yeah.
Prosperity, right? But the verses right before that, he's saying, hey, I forced you to be exiled. I forced you to go in exile to Babylon. And because I called you to this, I want you to plant gardens, build homes, have kids, and have grandkids, and pray for the peace and prosperity of the land, for in its peace you will find peace. And so this is written to the children of Israel who are exiled under Babylon. So I think the principle I get from that is regardless on when Jesus is coming back and how it's all going to work out in the end, the children in Babylon, children of Israel in Babylon, we're told to plant gardens, to build homes. So we're talking about planting something for the next season and the next generation, building homes, occupying space on earth, right?
Yep.
Proverbs says a righteous man leaves an inheritance for his grandchildren, right?
Yeah.
And have kids and have grandkids. So we're thinking multi-generationally, right? And pray for the peace and prosperity of the land which I've called you in. So even if it's like going to go all to hell in a handbasket, God's still provident over all of it. And I think that still applies. And then the very last passage I think of is Matthew 24 and 25. And Jesus is talking about the desolation, abomination, and all this stuff that's going to happen. And then Matthew 25 lays out this really interesting passage where he goes to the imminency of Christ, the parable of the wise and the foolish virgins, and living your life as if Jesus is going to return, be prepared. That's the first parable. The second parable is the parable of the talents, which is a very interesting parallel to sandwich on top of that, right? Because if you read Matthew 25, those verses and chapters were added later. So Jesus is just kind of flowing from Matthew 24 into 25. He goes from the parable of the wise and foolish virgins into the parable of the talents, which is to make the most of your time, talent, and treasure. And then it's no longer a parable. Then he goes right into the final judgment. And on the final day, I'll come and I'll separate the sheep from the goats. And I'll tell them, I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty, you gave me a drink. I was naked, you clothed me. I was in prison, you visited me. And they'll say, when did we do these things? And he says, whatever you do to the least of these. So what I think our eschatology should point us to is live as if Jesus is going to come back any moment. By making the most of your time, talent, treasure, opportunity, skill set, all the things that we're given, double up on those things for caring for the marginalized and the least of these. And by the way, when we care for the marginalized and the least of these, we eliminate the need for more social programs. We eliminate the need for welfare. We eliminate the need for outlandish taxes. I'm in California.
So it's crazy.
60% of the top line of taxes that some people are having to pay. All of this stuff can get eliminated if the church, in my opinion, if we really believe Jesus is going to come back, to me, that would look like more businesses being built. That would look like more gardens being planted. That would look like more houses and property being bought. That would look like, and then because of that, we're not just absolute capitalists where we're just doing it to build castles for ourselves. No, we're doing it for the kingdom. The kingdom means, Paul writes, if a man does not provide for the needs of his family, specifically the needs of his immediate family, he's worse than a non-believer, has denied the faith. And that's in the context of caring for widows. So that's in the context of a welfare system within the church, not the state, within the church. So I go, well, what if Christians got a hold of that? And whatever our eschatology was, we were like, you know what? I'm going to make the most of my time, talent, and treasure. If I feel like God's calling me to start a business, I'm going to start a business. If I feel like God's calling me to go in ministry, I'm going to go in ministry. And I'm going to use the abundance that America has a lot of to actually care for the people in my life and beyond, to be the hands and feet of Jesus.
Sounds like stewardship.
We're talking about.
So that's kind of where all of my eschatology goes. Is regardless on what you believe, I think that's where we all should land.
I know for sure, and we talked about that.
Definitely, Jesus saying, "Occupy until I come."
Exactly
what you're talking about.
So we ended our conversation talking about Jesus's heart in Matthew chapter 25, specifically the parable of the talents, which is exactly the theme of our brand new leadership planner, which includes how we structure goals, a calendar, our prayer journal, and a proven problem and solution framework to help you make the most of your time, talent, and treasure. Go to blessgod.shop to get yours now. And if you want to see the full conversation I had with Faith and Friction, we'll have that link over there. Make sure to go subscribe to their channel as well. All right, we're out of here. Peace.